Welcome back to the Hardware Unbox podcast for episode 100. Yay, we made it to episode 100 of this podcast. What a milestone for us. Anyway, in this week's episode, we're going to be talking a brief little bit about some news topics, including the announcement of Intel's Arrow Lake refresh processors. So we're going to discuss a little bit about that. Some graphics things as well have been announced this week, including AMD FSR Diamond, DLSS 4.5 dynamic frame gen, the release dates. We'll talk a bit about that. But largely what we're talking about in this episode is this Umart warranty situation, the whole case of a person's memory failing under warranty and how difficult it has been to get that replaced with the current memory pricing crisis. So just a few more thoughts on that, and yeah, let's get into it. Well, apologies to everyone for my voice in this podcast episode because I'm still a little bit sick. So earlier this week, I just got a standard cold or whatever, feeling a little crook earlier in the week, but still got the congestion now. So I'm fine to talk about some exciting PC hardware topics, but yeah, the voice is a little on struggle street, so I'll be relying on you, Steve, to do most of the talking, at least hopefully.
Yes, well, my family's also been sick, so that's great. I'm not too bad. I feel just a little bit run down. I was quite tired yesterday, but feeling a bit better right now. But yeah, just a slight little tickle in my throat as well. So I don't know if I'm getting what you've got. But anyway, I'll be fine. We'll make it happen, Tim. We'll get a podcast out this week, and we've got a few things to talk about. So
yes, well, I mean, we're at podcast 100, so it had to happen, right?
I actually didn't realize. I forgot we were at podcast 100. I need the party poppers or something.
Yeah, I was thinking party poppers, but then I was like, am I going to blow up people's eardrums, popping them on the audio? So anyway, we'll just go.
Not sure it works that way, but maybe. We don't want to risk finding out, is what you're saying.
That's right. So I guess we should start this one by, there's a couple of interesting new PC hardware topics to actually talk about this week, which is good for once because it has been a little slow to start the year. The first thing that I want to chat about is Intel's Arrow Lake refresh parts. So these are the new Core Ultra Plus processors. They've added a plus onto the end for some name. They've incremented the model number as well, making the names longer, which we always like to see. Mm-hmm. But essentially this Core Ultra 200S Plus series, I believe is 4 processors to begin with. Intel has officially announced these. They're set to be released in a couple of weeks. So we'll see testing of them quite shortly. But essentially we have got the Core Ultra 7 270K Plus and the Core Ultra 5 250K Plus, along with KF models for both of those processors. These are not anything super interesting. There is a few differences that were perhaps not expected with these models. The 270K, for example, has 4 more E-cores than the 265K, so nice, similar frequencies for that part. The 250K as well has 4 more E-cores compared to the 245K. Again, the frequencies for the P-cores and E-cores are quite similar. Some of the interesting things Intel has announced relating to performance is that they're claiming die-to-die frequency has increased by 900 megahertz, and this is I believe one of the key factors that they're saying is allowing gaming performance to be increased by on average 15% when comparing the Core Ultra 7 270K Plus to the Core Ultra 7 265K. So that's their first-party benchmark. We'll show the chart on screen for people watching the video version. And for the 250K Plus, they're claiming an average of 13% faster gaming performance compared to the 245K. So both of those, I believe, is largely due to what they're claiming is this increased die-to-die frequency. They've raised the official memory support as well from DDR5 6400 to DDR5 7200. So I haven't looked too closely into these performance claims. I would imagine that is also a factor that's gone into the benchmarking that Intel has done. And they've also got something which I believe they are calling the Intel Binary Optimization Tool. This is something that will allow you to, well, it's a compiler-related advantage that is being applied to these processors. Again, this is supposed to improve performance compared to the previous parts. But I think, I'm sure that you'll be talking a bit more about that in your review of these processors to see what it actually does and the benefits that it produces. But I think probably the biggest aspect to these new processors, the thing that makes them the most interesting, are the prices that Intel has announced for these parts. So the 270K Plus is going to come in at $299 MSRP and the 250K Plus at $199. So that is substantially cheaper than some of the previous Core Ultra parts and might make them a little bit more competitive compared to the previous models. I believe the 265K, for example, debuted at nearly $400 US.
Yeah, it was about $400 US part. That's right.
Yeah, so they're about $100 cheaper now at launch for both of those parts.
Yeah, well, the Core Ultra 7 270K Plus, I believe you can really think of that as a Core Ultra 9 part. So the 270K Plus is really a 285K with some tweaking and improvements, like to the, well, not just to the out-of-the-box memory frequencies, but also to that die-to-die frequency. So that was a $600 part. So you're essentially getting that part with a few tweaks for half price. So they've essentially slashed the pricing, the MSRP in half, and added some tweaks. So that's pretty nice.
Yeah, I believe with the Core Ultra 9 285K, the only real advantage that you would get over the 270K Plus in terms of the specifications is like slightly higher core frequencies. In some situations, I think the 285K can go up to 5.7 gigahertz. Intel has announced up to 5.5 for the 270K. But yes, the same P core and E core configuration, 8P and 16E. I think with the 250K Plus, it only has 6P cores, so you're not quite getting the 8P cores of the 265K. But outside of that, the other benefits that we sort of talked about, similar sort of frequency sitting in between those two, the Core Ultra 7 and Ultra 5 parts. So these parts, I guess we should also say, are going to be available on March 26th. So that's basically next week, 2 weeks from now, as we're recording this podcast episode. So it's, not too far away. It seemed like these parts are just sort of coming out with not a whole lot of fanfare. I believe there's been some rumors that there was potentially an Ultra 9 model that's been cancelled or something along those lines. But yeah, essentially that big move really is making the 285K substantially cheaper. So just based on what Intel has said so far, how much more competitive is that going to be? Like, how you have to refresh my memory on how far behind the 285K is compared to some of the other processors, I guess.
Yeah, well, sorry, I was thinking, I was basing what I just said on gaming performance, really. So, based on Intel's claims, good performance improvement for gaming, but yeah, how that all slots into the current lineups with the new pricing, I guess we'll have to wait and see for the reviews on that one, because there's a lot of stuff to cover there. But they are certainly, based on what Intel's shown so far, much more appealing than the initial wave of Core Ultra 200 series processors. So it'd be interesting if they could have essentially done this from the start. I mean, obviously they could have, but they've learned a bit more about this newer architecture over the past, what was it now, a year or so?
Yeah, I was just having a look at current pricing as well for some of these processors, because of course they can announce an MSRP and it can sound good, but then sometimes the existing parts are a bit more expensive at retail. But currently the 285K on Newegg is priced at $550. So if it indeed, the 270K Plus offers similar performance for $300, that will be a substantial decrease in price, even just going on current retail prices. The 265K that it's directly replacing is $293 at the moment. So that part has come down quite a bit since it's about $400 launch price to now be about the same price as the 270K Plus. So that is something that's going to be interesting to have a look at. But then, of course, as well, the main competing parts that you'd think this would be going up against would be things like the 9700X, for example, which is also around $300 at the moment. So I guess based on your current testing, like how for like a 285K versus a 9700X, how far ahead is the Zen 5 part, or is it similar, to just sort of give us an idea of where things stand before the reviews?
Sure. For productivity, Intel's well ahead. So AMD are currently getting crushed for that particular comparison for productivity performance in pretty much all workloads. So if you're looking at the productivity side of things, the 270K Plus is going to be a really good value productivity CPU. And then for gaming, I think the 9700X would still end up being faster on average, but it's pretty close. And it's so that they're both so capable when it comes to gaming that it becomes somewhat irrelevant at that point, I feel. But again, I haven't actually got all of that data worked out just yet, but my gut feeling is the 270K Plus is going to be so good for gaming anyway that the other things that, like the much better productivity performance, it's kind of like a reversal of what we used to see when we used to compare like maybe a what was it, a 2700X versus an 8700K or something like that. Was better at productivity, but slightly slower for gaming. Anyway, much more compelling, it seems, based on initial testing. So we'll just have to get into it and work it all out.
Yeah, that's right. I think the price really brings these things back into contention because, as you say, if the 285K and 9700X are sort of similar levels of gaming performance, or at least close enough for a lot of people, and now the price, at least based on Intel's claims, should be getting a similar processor for a lot less money. Yeah, it does beg the question of why Intel didn't do that to begin with and just make these parts really, really compelling from the launch of when the original non-Plus processors were available. But hey, they're coming out with a new lineup now, and I think they're going to have at least. It's hard to know when the next Zen processors are coming, but it doesn't sound like they're going to be relatively soon. So there could be many months where these processors are actually offering something to people. It's not like they're going to be superseded by a new generation straight away. Sounds like they will have at least a few months there.
Yeah, I think they'll be quite compelling. Obviously, the problem is nobody's really building computers right now because of the cost of DDR5 memory and SSDs, NAND flash. So a little bit unfortunate there. But yeah, anyway, initial thoughts are they look very compelling, and I'm interested to really, get into all the numbers and see how they do stack up. But yeah, certainly much better than the initial wave of the 200 series CPUs from Intel.
There's a couple of GPU feature announcements that have happened this week, coinciding with, I believe it's GDC that is happening at the moment, the Game Developers Conference or something along those lines. So first of all, from AMD, they have announced FSR Diamond along with Project Helix, which is the new Xbox project from Microsoft. So they've largely announced this FSR Diamond thing to sort of say, hey, this is going to be supported on Project Helix, the next Xbox. I guess we should be assuming all of these new features are coming to PC GPUs as well. So they are claiming that this will have next-gen ML-based upscaling. So you would assume a future version of FSR upscaling, a new version coming with FSR Diamond, probably separate to FSR 4.1, which we're about to sort of see very shortly. They're talking about a new ML-based multi-frame generation. So that would be the first multi-frame generation feature implementation from AMD. And also next-gen ray regeneration for ray tracing and path tracing. So they just debuted ray regeneration with FSR Redstone. They're saying come 2027 or whenever Project Helix will be ready, there'll be FSR Diamond releasing all of these new sort of things. One of the interesting things I saw was a claim from leaker Kepler_L2, who has a fairly reliable track record as far as leakers go. He or they are claiming that these features will be exclusive to RDNA 5, which I don't know if that's accurate. I think that would be not a particularly great move for AMD, given that we're currently seeing a fair bit of negative sentiment is probably the best way of putting it around AMD's lack of support for older GPUs. So, of course, FSR 4 is not supported on the RX 7000 or 6000 series GPUs, despite us knowing that it does work. Recently saw a Reddit thread on r/Radeon saying that the lack of FSR 4 support for RX 7000, 6000 has definitely ended my trust in Radeon. I feel like that's a pretty fair sentiment in that sense. And if they pull that move again, but doing that for FSR Diamond, but with, let's say, the RDNA 4 GPUs that are currently available, I think that would be, really bad for the Radeon brand. So we'll have to wait and see how all that goes because this is probably a fair while away. But I think AMD should probably try and get these features working on their older GPUs as much as possible. Did you have any thoughts on that?
No, I mean, I totally agree. The whole thing's confusing to me, and I feel like there's some important context that we just don't have as to why they haven't done that yet. But what that could possibly be, I have no idea. So if they continue dropping support for the previous generation with these upcoming features, while NVIDIA doesn't, that's not going to be good.
The other feature that we saw announced at GDC, or at least an official release date for this, is NVIDIA's DLSS 4.5 frame generation features. So they've already released the DLSS 4.5 upscaling model earlier this year, but now on March 31st, you'll be able to access all of the dynamic frame gen and other features that they originally announced at CES this year. So this includes dynamic frame generation. So this is a mode that looks at the maximum refresh rate of your monitor. It adjusts the level of frame generation to sort of try and hit that maximum refresh rate target at all times in game. They're also now increasing the frame gen multiplier up to 6x. So that would be 5 generated frames, I guess. And then the most interesting thing to me, at least, that I saw at CES was the new model for updated image quality. So one of the main issues with DLSS frame generation is the image quality of the generated frames, especially if you're seeing them on screen for a longer period of time with things like the 4x and 6x modes. One of the main issues that it had was things like UI elements. That's something that NVIDIA really hadn't been able to solve. Based on what I saw at CES, they're claiming to have improved that a bit, less UI garbling and those sort of things, which will make frame gen a bit more usable. But essentially on March 31st, everyone will be able to get access to this. It will be via an NVIDIA app beta version. So you will have to opt into the NVIDIA app beta process, and then you get access to these features, and then there'll be an official release a bit later. But yes, that feature is coming March 31st for people that are interested. But I think we'll move on now to talk about the Umart situation, I guess, this RMA process, the lack of support that you talked about in your video earlier this week, because it sounds like you had a few things that you wanted to say. So over to you.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of stuff to go through. Not 100% sure where to start, but I think where we should start is just clearing up a few points that were raised over and over again in the comment section of that video. Presumably, some of the American viewers and just people from other regions didn't quite understand why we were primarily targeting the retailer for all of this. Because, say, in the US, for example, when you purchase something from the retailer, there's no ongoing support there from the retailer. We have much better consumer laws in Australia than they do over in the US, for example. So they would then have to go and follow up directly with the first party manufacturer. So in this example, it would be Corsair. They would go and go through the RMA process with Corsair. Whereas in Australia, that doesn't happen at all. So to be clear for people who are confused or wondering, in Australia, when you buy a product from a retailer, the retailer is to offer all the support. They facilitate the warranty process or any kind of ongoing support for the product like that. That happens most of the time. There are cases where that doesn't happen. Usually it's when you do buy directly from the first party manufacturer. But if you've gone through a retailer, especially if it's like an authorized retailer, so in this case, Umart, with Corsair, you would take the memory back to Umart first. That would be your first port of call. That's what you're meant to do.
Yep. And to be clear, this isn't like an Australian cultural thing. Like everyone just has a culture of going back to the retail. This is a legal requirement.
It's a legal requirement for the businesses.
The retailer has to provide support, and all warranty claims have to go through the retailer first, which avoids that situation of retailers offering like a 30-day warranty and then manufacturers offering a 2-year warranty. There's no difference. You go through the retailer. That's where the warranty is provided.
Yeah, so the ACCC says who is responsible. So this is about facilitating the warranty process and offering the ongoing support. And they say businesses are responsible for resolving problems with products they sell to consumers. So that means the retailers. So they say, again, businesses, but the retailers must not tell consumers to go to the manufacturer for a remedy. However, for some consumer guarantees, customers can choose to seek a remedy from the manufacturer rather than the business they bought the product from. So really, as a customer, you have the flexibility there of going to either Corsair or Umart, though the first port of call should be the retailer you purchased it from. So that's why Umart was so heavily involved in the discussion. However, as was explained in that video, Goran didn't just go to Umart. So he went to Umart. They weren't super helpful initially, but he still pursued them. But because he wasn't very confident in what he was hearing from them and well aware of the current market conditions, he also went to Corsair, filled out an RMA claim with them, and simultaneously also went to r/Corsair, which is like the official Corsair Reddit page, and posted all of the relevant information there. Now, he never got a single reply from r/Corsair, and he never got a single reply from Corsair official through their official RMA channels. Just it's 20-something days now, and he hasn't heard anything back at all. So Corsair just ignored him, it seems, or it fell through the cracks. Something went wrong. And I've seen plenty of comments on our video where people have said they had a similar experience where they filled out the official Corsair RMA stuff and never heard anything. Other people said Corsair are amazing and helped them out straight away. So it seems that Corsair are willing to help, but it's not a foolproof system. And somehow, sometimes you will get ignored. I don't know if that's a regional thing or whatever. But just to clear up that point, because some people were like, this guy's clearly an idiot. Why would you go to Umart? Why would you go to the retailer? You always go to the manufacturer. And I just want to let you know, no, legally, that's wrong. Here in Australia, we don't do things that way. So that is why he went to Umart. But also, he did attempt to go to Corsair and they didn't help him for whatever reason.
We should clarify as well that this system is better. So going to the retailer, you get a lot more, well, in Australia, just in general, you get more consumer protection and more consumer rights. But it also creates this system where retailers are then encouraged to only sell quality products. They can't just sell you junk that you then have to go through a difficult returns process or refund process with an entirely different party. It really is on the retailer to make sure that products that they're selling are quality products that aren't going to break, because ultimately they're then responsible. But then on top of that, we hear a lot from people in the US who buy products and they only get like a 1-year warranty or a 2-year warranty or something like that. In Australia, warranties are much more flexible. And by that, I mean the consumers have a lot more rights around warranties, so that the warranty, all products have to last for what I think the law describes as a reasonable amount of time. So even if a manufacturer only offers a 1-year warranty, if it is deemed that that product should reasonably last for longer than this, that becomes the actual length of the warranty. So what is often used as an example would be a TV, for example. Manufacturers may only offer in the US a 1 or 2 year warranty on a TV, but in Australia, there's actually been court cases and mediation cases where it's been determined that the length of time that a TV should reasonably last is more like 5 or even 7 years. So that becomes the warranty length of time for TVs, because under the law, that's the reasonable amount of time that it should last. And all of this goes back to the retailer at the end of the day. So if you had a TV that failed after 4 years and you wanted to claim that it should have reasonably lasted for 4 years, which I think is very fair. Most people would expect an expensive TV would last for that long. They can then go to the retailer and say, hey, well, you sold me this product and it died under, in an unreasonable amount of time. So now we have to come to a resolution on that. So that's how it basically works in Australia. For people who aren't familiar, we have very different and much more protective consumer rights, which is something that businesses do complain about. So it goes both ways, but at least for consumers, it is quite stacked in the consumer's favor here.
Yes, and that has led to a few messy circumstances around this whole thing, which I suppose we can get to shortly. It comes down to, it's like when you were saying like they should only sell products they can support or whatever. It's a weird situation here with Corsair, because Umart would go to a distributor, probably someone like Cinex or whatever, to buy Corsair products. And so it's the distributor that's providing the warranty then, not Corsair to Umart, which has caused this whole problem. Whereas if you go to like PC Case Gear, for example, in their situation or their relationship with Corsair, they don't go through a distributor. They purchase directly from Corsair. So they would also get their warranty and support and claims and stuff directly from Corsair. And that means in this situation, for example, it probably would have been easier for them to replace the memory because they work directly with Corsair and that there's a few more options available to them. Whereas it's with a local distributor, the local distributor's like, yep, sure, we'll refund you for the purchase price. And that's it. Like, we'll take the memory back. And then once they accumulate enough memory from certain brands, they'd probably do like a batch process of warranties or something like that rather than ship. Because, they're shipping individual kits overseas. That would not be very cost effective, given they bring these things in probably in like large shipping containers and stuff like that. So that becomes really messy. I guess with this podcast, the assumption is you've watched the video. So we're not going to like re-go over all of that again with the situation with Goran and his memory from Umart. But what's your take on all of this, Tim? Like, what do you think Umart should have done? Because I guess that's moving forward. We know what did happen. We know what the customer wanted. but what do you think should have happened?
Yeah, I mean, I think what should have happened is kind of as well, like not really relevant to the region. So what I'm about to say is what I think should happen in all regions, regardless of what the actual warranty or consumer rights say, because I think this is just the right thing to do. I think in the case where you buy a product, it fails under warranty, and that's clear, like there's no ambiguousness. It had a limited lifetime warranty. It failed in the warranty. It's a major failure. It doesn't work anymore. I think with any product where that happens, and then to get a replacement of that product, it would cost the consumer more money. That should be on the business to fund. So by that, I mean, if a consumer buys a product, it's in this case memory for $150 and it's $700 to replace, it should not be on the consumer to foot the bill to replace it with currently working memory. So most of the time, this isn't a problem, right? Because a product fails, the price of the new product is probably pretty similar to the price of the failed product. So whether you got a refund or a replacement, it doesn't really matter too much. It's often just going to be easier to take the refund and then purchase the exact same product again so that you could get a new working version of that. But in the case where a product increases in price substantially, I think it's very unreasonable for the consumer to have to foot that bill because they've done nothing wrong. They've just bought a product and it stopped working.
Or even if that product is no longer available, like it should be repaired, or they should have enough inventory to replace their expected level of defects. Like, because you've bought that product because you want it, right?
Yeah.
And therefore, under the warranty period, you should be guaranteed to have that product that you went into the agreement with the manufacturer that I'm going to purchase this product from you and it needs to work within this agreed upon period of time. So it doesn't really matter the circumstances of the market or whatever. It's just you're owed that product.
That's right. That's right. I 100% agree with that. So yeah, in this situation, I think what really should have happened is that Umart replaces the memory with equivalent memory. And I don't really agree with Umart's take on things like, well, this specific SKU is not available, so our only course of option is a refund. I think, the retailer, even at the end of the day, Corsair and other territories where you don't go directly to the retailer, it should be on them to provide the closest similar product that they can in the event that the original product that was purchased is not available. And this may be the case where, let's say it's a TV, for example. You buy a TV, it fails under warranty, you take it back to the manufacturer and they're like, well, we don't manufacture that model anymore because we make new models every year. So your 2024 model is now a 2026 model. In that situation where, let's say, TVs are now way more expensive, the manufacturer should just be giving you the 2026 model for no additional, like they shouldn't be charging the consumer. It's just like very simple process. You send it back. The option is the new model, so you get the new model. There shouldn't be any of this, sort of trying to get around it with a loophole of, well, this SKU isn't available, we can only offer a refund. As close as possible should be fine. And I think most consumers as well would accept that. It's not like they're going to be upset that, I'm not getting that exact SKU that I ordered. So long as they're getting a close working version that's very similar, that should suffice. So yes, when you buy a product that has something like a limited lifetime warranty, that should mean that you are entitled to have a working version of that for the length of the warranty, in that case, whatever the limited lifetime says. So yes, Umart should have replaced the memory. And then I think it's on Umart really to deal with the internal issues, the loss of, because obviously it's going to cost them to replace $150 memory with $700 memory, but then it should be on Umart to go to the distributor and get that money back and sort of go to them and say, well,
or Corsair, get it replaced.
Whatever the case is, if Umart is losing money, it's then on them to go to their warranty process and go to the distributor or Corsair and go, well, we're out, Umart as a company, $500 or whatever on this memory. So now you have to remedy us, the retailer. And so that's how it really should have worked. It shouldn't have been this situation where the consumer loses out at the end of the day. I think that's obviously the worst outcome here. Consumers in this situation should never be losing out. It should be as high up in the chain as possible, ideally all the way back to the memory module manufacturers, to sort of go and say, well, that's the part that failed, so now you owe us replacement parts. Because ultimately the manufacturer is the person that is responsible for producing a working product. So you'd hope that at the end of the day, in an ideal situation, Samsung, SK Hynix, Micron, whoever is the one reimbursing Corsair, who then reimburses the distributor, who then reimburses the retailer, who reimburses the consumer. But I guess the way the process works, unfortunately, means that they're trying to put it onto the consumer as much as they can.
Yeah, because unfortunately, it's not an ideal world. So basically, the companies where it is a bit unfair on a Umart or PCK or whoever it might be, is that they have to operate under Australian consumer laws, but companies like Corsair don't have to. So I was speaking with a few retailers on this, and one of them said, this law drives them crazy. They wish that any company that sold, product in Australia had to abide by Australian law, which then becomes the obvious things that happen there is products just become more expensive. Yep. So, people want everything as cheap as possible. And it's why people buy from Umart over a PCK skier, for example, because Umart is typically cheaper. And then people will slander PCK skier going, they're too expensive, so on and so forth. But in my experience, you get much better customer support from PCK skier than you do Umart. And that's because you're paying more at PCK skier. Now, I'm not guaranteeing you'll always have a better experience, but that has been my experience. Talking with PCK skier, their policy there is to treat the customer in a way that they would want to be treated. So, they don't mess you around as much as what we've seen in the case of Umart, and they'll do their best to get a good solution for you. And they've said, this has been obviously a nightmare for them. They've had a couple of dicey cases and stuff like that, but really they're doing their best to just replace the memory as quick as they can so the customer can go about their business. And they realize that customers don't just want a refund for, whatever it is, $150 that they paid 2 years ago and then have to turn around and pay an additional like $450, $500, whatever it might be to acquire memory again. So, but, I feel for all of the retailers with what's going on here. I keep thinking, because the result now is, since the video went live, within hours essentially of the video going live, Corsair got in contact directly with Goran, provided him with a tracking number, and lo and behold, he has a Corsair Vengeance memory kit on. I think it might have already arrived. But it was scheduled to be delivered sometime today at the latest. So he's got his Corsair memory replaced, and Corsair said the defective memory, they'll work that out and sort that out. Don't worry about it. You've got a replacement kit now. So obviously that's happened because of my video. He was unable to contact Corsair for a replacement, but Corsair obviously don't want to look bad in this, so they've got it replaced quickly. And in a way, you sort of have to give them the benefit of the doubt, because we don't really know what went wrong there, and we didn't get a series of horrible customer support replies from Corsair, whereas we did from Umart.
And to be fair to Corsair, in a sense, right, we don't really know how they would operate in Australia, knowing that most RMA processes go through the retailer first. So while it is, I would say, probably poor form of them not to respond to any of their emails from Goran at all, if you're operating in a country where the standard returns process is through the retailer, you might just be expecting them to get a resolution through that avenue. So not that I'm saying that's a huge excuse, but like that could explain it.
Whether it's thanks to our video or not, Corsair's done the right thing here, and they've done a good job, and they've quickly got a resolution for the customer. So that's great. Spoke to a few different retailers, and they gave me varying reports on, Corsair's customer service and honoring warranties. There's been a few dicey incidents with retailers. So this isn't customers. This is actual retailers saying, it took months to get a replacement kit for a known, like a proven defective kit. So there was months of delay there for the customer to get the replacement. And in some instances, they weren't able to replace with the same SKU. So they got a different model. Whether it was worse or not, I'm not 100% sure on that. But even so, for, I guess, a bit more information in the case of Goran, he pleaded with Umart. He said, look, guys, I'm not an unreasonable person. I'm not an unreasonable customer. I am fully aware of the current market conditions. I just need some DDR5 memory. I purchased DDR5 memory. It doesn't work. I need it replaced. I don't want a refund. I want the product I paid for, DDR5 memory. Now, I don't need a SKU that's better. I don't even need a SKU that's the same. I just need 32 gigabytes of DDR5. It can be base JetX stuff. It can be X demo. It can be used. It just needs to work, and it needs to be 32 gigabytes of DDR5 memory. So he didn't really mind too much what he got back. Like if it was a scuffed up demo kit, he probably would have been on his way and been like, look, fine, it works. I'm happy with that. I can get on with life. I don't need to fight you to the death on getting an exact replacement of what I had. So he was very flexible, very accommodating, very reasonable, and they weren't willing to budge. So a PC case gear in that instance would be able to work with you and work something out based on what I've been told. So I'm sitting here thinking, okay, what could have Umart done better? How, because especially with a customer that I think even if they had have told him, look, we can get you a replacement, but because of the memory shortages and how this all works, it's going to take us 2 months to remedy the situation with Corsair. I think in that situation, he would have been okay with that. It's less than ideal, but it's better than, no, we're not helping you at all. Because I think that's really a worst case scenario where they're like, we'll give you back your original purchase price, which some people think that's really reasonable because he gets back what he paid. But in the current market, it's completely useless. So therefore not terribly reasonable. If a solution's useless, then I don't see how you could deem it as reasonable. So could Umart have gone to Corsair and got it replaced directly? That's sort of what you're indicating they should have done. They should have gone about it that way, either giving him a replacement instantly and then dealing with the problem internally, however long that takes, or telling the customer, we're dealing with this directly with Corsair, but they're telling us it's going to be a 2-month wait. So that's the situation. I feel like that would have also been a better outcome than the one they faced. Now, Umart can't tell the customer to go to Corsair because Umart, I believe they purchased MSY and PC Byte, which are other Australian retailers. And back in 2011, MSY was penalised $200,000 by the ACCC. I think they got fined again in like 2016 because they misrepresented like warranties. They were charging for like in-house warranties, and then they were telling customers that they didn't do the warranty. You have to go directly to a company like Corsair to have your warranty fulfilled, which is against the law. So they were charged for that. So they're probably very careful about telling customers to go to Corsair for a warranty, even though in this instance that would have been, well, it would have been the best thing to do if he was able to do that, because again, he attempted to do that and Corsair didn't respond to his RMA request. So it's just a really messy situation.
I think there's ways of going about that though, because obviously what they've probably been fined for is not honoring a warranty and just telling a customer to go away, go to Corsair, get your problem solved there. I think the whole issue that I had with reading the long conversation between Goran and Umart is really just how unhelpful Umart appeared to be. I think the sort of things that you were saying about how, if they had at least tried to sort of remedy the solution in a way that was reasonable, it would have made the whole interaction a lot more pleasant. So even if they came back and said, we've contacted Corsair, the distributor, whoever, and it's going to take 2 months to get this memory back for you, you might want to try Corsair. You might want to try Corsair's RMA process and see what they say.
So I think that's illegal. They can't do that, which is where the law gets a bit ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I think if that's something that's illegal, that seems a bit over the top to me, because I think so long as you're appearing, or at least so long as you are actually trying to resolve the issue for the customer, and you're also saying, well, we've heard back from Corsair and they're being, in what we think as a retailer, unreasonable by making you wait for 2 months, you might have a bit more luck with Corsair directly. But failing that, if they don't respond or do whatever, we'll just go through the process.
That's
and
right.
We'll sort the warranty for you. But at least offering that as sort of a potential solution, surely that should be allowed.
I think so. So you're telling the customer to be a bit proactive, like we're doing the best we can, we're taking care of it, but also if you want this replaced sooner and you want to do your best to guarantee your chances of having it replaced, get a bit proactive, kick Corsair up the butt. We're doing the same. If we both kick Corsair up the butt, then it'll ensure that you get your memory replaced maybe a bit sooner. I feel like that's not breaking the law and very reasonable, and I would be amazed if the ACCC find someone for that kind of behavior, because I'm sure that wasn't what they were doing originally that resulted in the fines.
Yeah. And I think the thing that is probably the most disappointing in the way that Umart handled this situation was going ahead and processing the warranty claim as a refund despite Goran saying he didn't want that to occur. And so I think that's really the thing that gets me the most is, and this would be bad in really any country that would do this, right, is if you go to a retailer or manufacturer and you say, I want this part that's broken replaced, and they offer you a refund, if you say, I don't want the refund, the retailer or manufacturer shouldn't just give you the refund anyway and keep your product. You should at the very least have the option to have the product returned to you, even if that costs the buyer money. Like they're like, we'll send it back to you, but you have to pay us the $20 in shipping or whatever.
To add a bit more context to that, so he didn't even ship it to them because Umart is a brick and mortar store. There's obviously one relatively local to him. So when he had the problem, confirmed it was their memory, touched base with them, they explained, the current market conditions, it might be difficult to get a replacement. He said, well, it's got a warranty, I want a replacement. So he went down to the store in person and handed it to them, and they warned him that they're pretty much just doing refunds at this point in time. And he said, well, I want it replaced by Corsair under warranty. I'm not accepting a refund of any type, at least for the original purchase price. I don't want a refund. I want the memory repaired or replaced. He made that extremely clear when dropping it off, and they said, okay, well, we'll see what we can do. And from that point of handing it over, he was never getting his memory back. That was it. It was gone.
Yeah, so I think that's not a way that a retailer should be operating, I guess. It seems not very, consumer forward, right? Like you basically just ignoring what the consumer wants, like the customer of your store. You're just blatantly ignoring what they want. And yeah, there might be some mix-ups and stuff like that. But I think if it came to it being a mix-up, like for example, Goran hands over the memory to someone and says, I do not want this refunded, replace this only. Then it goes to someone else and someone else within the company and blah, blah, blah. Eventually, the refund person who wasn't in contact with Goran sends off the memory to get it refunded. Then that whole situation happens. But I think as a retailer, it's kind of on you to then go, well, look, guys, sorry, we kind of stuffed up in this situation. You said you didn't want it refunded. Our RMA department accidentally refunded it. So now we're going to remedy it in the way that you wanted it, which is in this case a replacement. Do at least something to sort of, remedy the situation with the customer. But in this situation, they've just gone, well, it kind of basically sounded like a strong arming. It's like, well, we told you we could only refund it. And despite what you wanted, we just did that anyway. And there's no option. You just kind of have to accept it.
Yeah. And then the insane part is when he requested the memory back so he could use one stick or do whatever, the truly insane part was like, well, you can't have your memory back because we've sent it off for warranty. What? That was beyond insane. Because even if the warranty through Corsair, they thought it might be a 2-month thing, that's, again, better than never getting your memory back. So that was just truly bizarre to me. But I think, like you say, the Umart strong arming and just their just tone deaf responses and their unwillingness to help the customers crazy. So they did end up leaving a comment on our video. They've actually left 2 comments, one of which people can see if they go to the video because I've pinned it. The other one's buried deep in thousands of comments, so you probably won't find it. But their comment on our video really did blow me away because it was just a repeat of what they were doing. I don't know how they thought that was going to address this issue in any way, clarify things, help their position or the customer in any way. Um, Basically, they led by saying, "Hi there. Totally understand the frustration from this case and would like to provide some more context here on how this warranty case was processed." So I thought, okay, that's great. They're going to provide some more context. We're getting to hear from Umart. Maybe there's something here that changes all of this or improves the situation in some way. Don't know what that could be, but I'm excited to find out what. And they go on to say, when a product is lodged under warranty with Umart, our policy is to offer the customer a replacement or a refund, depending on the customer's preference, provided replacement stock is available. Okay, all sounds good so far. In this particular case, replacement stock of the product was unfortunately not available at the time the warranty claim was processed. So, which is really not true. As a result, the claim was resolved with a refund in line with our warranty process. We understand that situations like this can be frustrating, especially when product prices may have changed since the original purchase. Our team always aims to resolve warranty cases as fairly and quickly as possible under our policy. We would like to thank Corsair for stepping in to assist with this issue. If Corsair has communicated with local distributors regarding this case, we would appreciate it if they could provide us with the details to help ensure the matter is fully resolved. So basically, they're saying they would normally give the customer the preference to provide a replacement or a refund, replacement if there's stock available. And they're saying there wasn't stock available, which basically Corsair had discontinued that specific model, it seems. So there was never going to be replacement stock, but there was very similar stock. And the truth of the matter is, if we were operating under more normal times, let's say midway through last year, they would just reply to the customer and say, look, we can either issue you a refund or we have a similar spec memory kit in stock from Corsair. It's not the same model, but it's similar. You could take that if you would prefer. So they were going to offer that always, and that's what would have happened. And either option then would have been reasonable. But if the customer just wanted some memory ASAP and they're like, yep, that looks good enough compared to what I have, I'll take that. So they would have always offered that. But the reason they're not offering that right now is because it's going to be a pain in the butt for them to replace the memory, and it could be a costly process. And they want to take on zero risk there and just tell the customer to bugger off, essentially. That's what that boils down to. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I do agree. And I think you can't really have a solution for replacements being, well, it has to be the exact same SKU, because that obviously opens up a loophole. Like the loophole would be you would change the SKU regularly and you'd regularly discontinue models.
Exactly.
So that you'd never have to replace anything.
And then the warranty means nothing.
Yeah. So then the warranty would mean, oh, well, would you just get your money back or whatever? So obviously what has to be the case, and this is indeed reflected in the law, is that, a suitable replacement of a very similar product is acceptable. And so, yeah, I mean, I can see what Umart are trying to do with that comment. They're just trying to stand by their original decisions. The way that they've phrased it in the comment is probably a little more reasonable than some of the quite crazy things that they were saying in the original communication, that sort of the private support tickets where they're sort of trying to justify it's not a major failure and stuff like that. The reasoning that they're making, it sounds a bit more reasonable on the surface of it, but at the same time, if there was no memory available whatsoever, you could sort of understand that position, but there was memory available, so sort of saying there's no replacement is kind of not true.
There's no replacement they're happy with. I also don't know what the additional context is. They're just saying the same thing in a different way. I mean, it's barely a different way, to be fair. They're kind of just saying the same thing.
Well, they haven't really owned in any way, based on the comments that I've seen, the sort of, regardless of, the law aspects of like whether they have to do a replacement or not, they kind of haven't really done any owning of the poor support that they've given to this customer, and sort of the weird, confusing language, the taking of memory and not giving it back angle. They've just sort of said, well, this is the situation. We could only offer a refund. We'll give you some nicer language to describe that. But there's no, we're sorry for taking the memory and not offering it back to the customer when they ask for it. There's no, sorry for the frustrating communication. It's just really like, we understand that this can be frustrating, which as a consumer, like that's really, I get annoyed when I see that sort of language. It's sort of like,
Yeah, it's like
it
you were
grinds your gear.
frustrating.
Yeah, it's like this language is frustrating.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like,
And they're going to say, like, our team aims to resolve warranty cases as fairly and quickly as possible under our policy. Again, it wasn't who was it fair to. Like, it wasn't fair at all. And Goran wasn't even asking for necessarily a quick solution. He just wanted a solution that was more fair than the one that they put forth. So, and then they thanked Corsair for stepping in and essentially solving the issue. I don't know why they weren't able to communicate with Corsair. They're the large business entity. I don't know why they needed me to sort of step in and facilitate that process. It's just, that's weird as well. I would find that more embarrassing on their behalf that a random YouTuber was able to get Corsair to replace the memory within 24 hours. But, maybe that speaks to how broken the system is and that the Australian laws aren't they don't reach far enough to sort of protect the retailers as well. It creates this sort of broken system where there is a lot of consumer laws, but there's not the laws in place to ensure that the retailers can provide or operate under those laws. So it's a bit of a weird situation. But I just found that comment a bit weird. Like they had the ability to respond to that video and reverse sort of what's a very damaging situation that they find themselves in, and they really just like gave a generic response that didn't, in my opinion, provide any additional context and didn't resolve the situation anyway. Like it's just a continuation of the same problem.
Yeah, it reminds me of, when you see on like social media, sometimes there's like a support bot and they respond to people even for things like you might mention a brand and then the support bot comes and says like, I'm sorry to hear about your poor experience with our brand or whatever. And even though the original comment isn't like really relevant or wasn't really complaining or trying to reach out to them directly, it was kind of just like an automated generic response. That's what that comment felt like to me, was sort of like, oh, there's an issue here. We need to send out our bot to sort of like, put some nice language on things and sort of just like hope for the best, like people do on the sort of social medias like X or whatever. So
in response to their comment, I responded straight away. I didn't pin the comment right away. I was happy for it to be a bit more of a slightly more private conversation without, everyone jumping in on it. So I left it for 22 hours before I pinned it. They didn't respond in those 22 hours to my comment, so that's why I pinned it. But basically, I just said to them, that's the exact context we already had and was provided in the video, which everyone seems to agree with. And I just asked them the basic question, why would anyone shop at Umart? Like, what are the benefits to shopping at Umart if you're not interested in providing customer support or, going, I don't even want to say above and beyond what we think is the bare minimum for a customer, especially during difficult times? Like, why would you go to Umart? Why would you just not buy from AliExpress or something where you already know that you're probably not really getting any support, but you're just buying it because it's cheaper there?
Or just used off eBay or something. Like,
yeah, why buy it somewhere as cheap as you can because you're not really getting support? And then I said, the obvious thing to do here would be to handle the warranty claim internally rather than going to the distributor that doesn't care about the customer, and then provide the customer with the warranty option that they requested and deserved. I said, what was stopping Umart from going to Corsair directly for a replacement? I said to him, I realized they can't tell a customer to do that because that's against Australian consumer law, but what was stopping Umart from doing that and facilitating the warranty process? Because presumably Umart, which is a big retailer group, they would have a bit more pull with a company like Corsair than an individual would from Australia. So at least going into bat for them then, like I said in the video, puts it on Corsair. They become the problem. They're the roadblock, not Umart. And then I just said, that seems preferable to just taking the memory and never giving it back. And then I just asked them, like, why is it taking a YouTuber getting involved to rectify the situation for their customer so quickly? And then they never responded to that. So I've actually still not really had an interaction with Umart. And then oddly, a day later, they made a second comment on the video but they didn't include that in the reply chain to their first comment. So they just made another comment that got completely buried in the thousands of comments, which was a bit weird. So they just made a second comment. I don't know if they know how YouTube works or whatever, whoever's in charge of this account, but they just like threw it out there in the thousands of comments. So like basically nobody has read this comment, but it is there on the video from Umart. And they say, we understand why this situation has caused frustration for the customer and the community, and we appreciate people raising their concerns. Warranty issues can be stressful, particularly when replacement stock is difficult to obtain. That's just a like, okay, whatever. And then they go on to say, we would like to clarify several points that are currently being discussed. The RAM in this case was processed through the standard distributor RMA channel used by most Australian retailers. When the warranty was lodged, the submission authorized the product to be sent to the authorized distributor or manufacturer for assessment and warranty processing. Once the product entered that process, it was forwarded to the distributor and was no longer in our possession. So all of that's like fine, okay. What I don't understand is if that's the standard process, why, like how long does that standard process take? And why is the system so that the customer can never get that product back after it's been warrantied? Like everyone seems to agree that it wasn't the customer's fault. The product is under warranty, and that it can be replaced under warranty, or that I don't know. What do you think about all of that?
Yeah, it's
confusing,
it's a weird one.
right?
It feels like more of it's just an excuse, really. They're just trying to excuse what they've done. Like they're trying to make logical sense of this situation. You can't really. I mean, the business is trying to do what the business wants, and to make it not seem so bad when they have to justify their actions, and then so that kind of just informs the rest of it, right? Like they're just trying to do what they want to do because they're a business and they don't want to pay the cost.
They elaborate. They say, for this reason, the suggestion that the product was kept, taken, or resold by us due to current DDR5 pricing is incorrect. I didn't actually say they'd done any of that. I was sort of putting that more on the distributor. But anyway, this practice has never occurred at Umart. So they're saying they essentially haven't stolen the memory. The goods were submitted to the authorized distributor as part of the warranty process. The distributor later advised that replacement stock of the same model was not available, and the claim was therefore resolved by issuing a credit to Umart rather than replacement units. So they're saying went back to the authorized distributor. The authorized distributor was like, yeah, nah, that product's not available anymore. We're not going to bother pursuing this. We'll just refund you the $155, and then presumably it's the distributor that's taking the $155 hit, and they're never getting the memory processed under warranty. Whether or not that's true, we have no idea. It's highly possible that the distributor ends up getting the memory replaced through Corsair with a similar or same model, and then go on to sell that for a massive profit. Like, it's possible they could do that. And regardless of whether that's possible or not, Corsair should replace or repair the memory under warranty and return it to the customer. So it's just the system in place just doesn't work under these circumstances.
Yeah, I find it weird, the language. Well, I don't find it weird. I know why they're doing it, but it's not really that acceptable to sort of say, well, we didn't keep it. It's like, well, to the consumer's perspective, that's what's happened. Umart appears to have kept the memory. They could say, well, we sent it off to another person, so we didn't technically keep it. It's like, okay, cool, but like the customer doesn't have the memory. And I guess this sort of brings up is when Goran submitted the memory back to Umart for the warranty process, even though he explicitly said that he didn't want a refund, was there an implicit contract that like now the warranty process is taking place? Or was it more that he submitted it as an assessment of the situation? Like, I'm handing this memory to you to prove so that you can prove it doesn't work.
Yeah.
But we shouldn't be taking this any further. It's just for you to assess that it doesn't work and that I'm being truthful. And then we can have a discussion beyond that point about what the next steps are, because that's what I feel
That's exactly
like the situation has been.
Yeah.
That he wanted to submit the memory to prove that he's not lying, because fair enough. And then anything beyond that is a discussion. And from that point, it should have been, we can offer a refund. Do you want the refund? We can progress with the RMA process. Or he doesn't want the refund. He wants a replacement. Okay, there's a problem here. We're going to try and BS our way out of this. But at least at that point, he could get the memory back to sort of do some sort of other process with. It seems like, I guess, Umart has just assumed that when he submitted the memory that he was willing to go through he was just willing to accept all of Umart's terms and conditions of doing the warranty, when I don't really think that was the case. And so, yeah, they could sort of claim like, well, we didn't keep the memory because we were just doing the warranty process. But it's like, but should you have done the warranty process? I feel like you shouldn't have done the warranty process. You should have listened to the customer who didn't want a refund and halted the warranty process once you had known that, and then talk to the consumer about the next steps. And if they're still refusing a replacement, which I think is probably not legal, again, you probably have to ask a lawyer for more information about that. But if they were still denying that, then they could go and find some sort of other potential remedy, like just sending the memory back to him. So I think the way that they've handled that and the sort of the excuse that they've tried to offer there, again, they're trying to make themselves seem like they've done the right thing under their processes, under their policies and things like that. But I think, there's any reasonable person reading these sorts of the correspondence that was happening, a reasonable person probably wouldn't have, if they were trying to be beneficial to the consumer, they wouldn't have done what Umart has done.
No, that's right. The customer service sucked. There's no two ways about it, because it was really the worst possible outcome they had to offer, apart from like not supporting them at all, which, that's not on the table.
Yeah.
So of all the possible outcomes, it's really the worst, because a better outcome for Goran would be, rather than because the outcome they're offering is $150, 150 Australian dollars or 155 Australian dollars. That's the outcome they're offering. Now, in my opinion, I would rather not do that. I would rather get my memory kit back and use a single stick of memory, which will cost me nothing apart from the fact that I'll have half the amount of memory that I should have at degraded performance, but I can still at least use my computer. General usage goes unchanged. I might have a hit to gaming performance depending on how CPU limited I was.
And the single working stick is worth more than the refund amount.
Exactly.
So that's a preferable thing. Like,
exactly.
For the consumer, once it gets to let's ignoring the legalities of what Umart can and can't do, if the final resolution was get the memory back or the refund, getting the memory back is preferable because the one stick works and is worth more money.
Even the defective stick, mind you, is worth more money than $155.
Yeah, I guess you could probably sell it.
Well, it can be repaired. So it has, and in the current market, the defective stick is worth more than 155 Australian dollars. In the way that it was tested and what was shown to be wrong. But so getting the memory back, you have the option of continuing to use your computer with one stick, which then gives you the option to hold out and wait for memory pricing to improve before buying an additional stick or an additional kit for, whatever the pricing settles back down to. Or the cheaper option than buying a new kit right now, which is basically what he was faced with having to do if they refunded him $155, which would give him a $155 discount off a $700 kit, would be to buy one stick of memory. So then he has 32 gigabytes again, and that would cost him about let's say $300. I'm not exactly sure on what individual sticks cost, but it's about that. So that's better than spending $500, for example. So they were preferable options. Or giving him the ability to go to Corsair, which again, he didn't have much luck with there, but maybe another shot at it, or if he just continued persisting with Corsair, he may have got somewhere. I mean, Corsair...
And he probably needed the memory back from Umart to then go to Corsair, right? So,
well, yes, yeah, he couldn't have gone to Corsair without the memory, because that was another weird thing, because thankfully, because of our video, Corsair weren't worried about messing around with those minor details. But I did say to Corsair, I'm like, well, we don't actually know where the memory is anymore, so that makes getting it replaced through you guys a little bit difficult. But of course, given our video and all that, Corsair were like, oh, no, we're going to express post him one right now as we're talking. This can all go away. So yeah, but anyway, basically it was terrible customer service, and they offered him really what was the worst possible outcome of all the reasonable or viable outcomes that were there to pick from, as we just discussed. So that was really my problem with it. And then, obviously, taking the memory and giving him no option at the end was just insane, while claiming it's being replaced. Well, while claiming he can't have it back because it's being warranted. It's just.
Yeah, and it sounded like from the comments that there were a lot of people in various different countries currently facing similar issues with memory or SSD warranty processes, where they're basically being offered refunds on products that are now much more expensive. So yeah, I really feel for all those people that are currently struggling with this. And like we mentioned in the video, we feel for the retailers as well, because if they're having to face lots and lots of RMA claims and that's all costing them lots and lots of money because all those products are now more expensive, that's not a great position for them to be in. And additionally, they're not selling lots of stuff at the moment. So even if it goes all the way back to a company like Corsair, who has to repair and replace all these memory kits, have to source new memory modules from the module manufacturers who have jacked up prices massively, that process sucks for them as well. Like, that's not a great position. It's costing them money. And as well, like, it's not like a company like Corsair would be selling tons and tons of product at the moment. There's been all this discussion of, not specifically for Corsair, but that a lot of PC component manufacturers, the viability of their businesses are at risk because the downturn in PC sales, the component sales, is not just memory and SSDs, but there's also the potential for people to not be buying more normally priced products. Because if you can't buy memory to build a PC, why would you buy a power supply or a case to build a new PC? You just wouldn't. So yeah, it has a lot of impact across all of these companies in a really unfortunate way. So yeah, while I am obviously very disappointed in the way that Umart has handled this situation, and I am a little disappointed with how Corsair originally handled the situation, I can sort of understand the other perspective as well of how they're getting screwed, and that is something that you mentioned in the video that I think is also important to mention here as well. So if you didn't have anything else to say about the warranty situation, we can take a break and come back and talk about our boring lives. All right, we're back. Boring life stuff. I'm going to start this week because I should probably inform people about what is going to be happening within the next couple of weeks, which is that my partner is currently 37 weeks pregnant. So I'm about to have a baby, which is, pretty exciting. First baby for me. So I'm not sure how many more podcasts there will be in the next couple of weeks. It really depends on how things are going to be happening.
You can do podcasts with the baby in tow, Tim. You can pull it off. Have the little jumperoo next to you while we're doing it.
Yeah, people will be really keen on those podcasts. But basically, there's going to be, I guess, a pause in the podcast for a little while, probably up until Computex, depending on whether Steve wants to make podcasts by himself. I'm not sure what the situation is going to be. But for at least a few months, there will be, at least you probably won't see too much content from me on the channel once the baby comes. I am planning on going to Computex in June, so we'll see how that goes. But I won't be covering things like DLSS 4.5 dynamic frame gen, for example, because I'm almost certain that my baby will be born before then. So that's just probably not going to be too many more updates on that situation from now. Probably not going to share too much about the whole family life, because that's not something I normally do, but it's probably, people will be wondering, what's going on? Why isn't Tim around for a while? That's the situation that's happening. So yeah, that's basically my news, I guess. What's been happening out your way?
Yeah, I don't think too much since we last spoke. Like you, as I said, the family's been sick and I've been trying to dodge it as much as possible. I think I have what they have because I've had a very dry throat. It's been a bit difficult to talk during this podcast, but I think I'll be pretty much fine by tomorrow. So as I said, I was very drowsy and lethargic yesterday. I'm feeling much better today. So it was probably just like a 24-hour bug for me, but it hit them a bit harder. Balin seems to be doing okay, so that's good. But yeah, just been working on a few things, taking it pretty easy with, the state of things. Obviously, we have some upcoming products that we discussed earlier in the podcast that I'm currently testing, so working on that. But yeah, nothing really too exciting to speak of at the moment. I've got a few developing stories that I'll be able to save for future podcasts when we have those. But yeah, I don't want to talk about any of them right. There's like 3 things that I'm actively working on that I don't want to talk about just yet because I haven't got a resolution on those just yet. So we'll leave that. We can probably end it there, to be honest, for this one, Tim. So bit of a short one, but some good news on your side anyway. Some exciting stuff there. So I think that's got us covered for the boring life.
It's not particularly boring, is it? Yeah, it's been many weeks of supporting my partner's pregnancy and sort of getting things ready for the baby to arrive and everything. So yeah, I don't know how prepared you can really be for this situation, but I'll find out soon, won't I?
Yeah, you're right. I did it twice, so yeah, you'll be fine.
Yeah, we'll be all right. No, it's good that the YouTube channel and everything is currently in a position where we can sort of, at least I can take a little bit of a break from producing content. I think back when you had your baby, right, it was much more hectic in terms of YouTube channel and everything.
Well, yeah, I was growing the channel, and yeah, it was very full on. I didn't sleep a whole lot, but that's all right. It's what you got to do.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I still think in that little period I will be doing some testing because it is inherent to me. Like it's part of who I am that I just spend all this time testing stuff. So I'm not sure how much I'll be able to actually give up on doing that. Mm-hmm. So you might see some stuff. Who knows? But yeah, the main focus will be obviously the baby as well. One other thing I did want to mention just briefly, because it is happening, and this is completely unrelated to the baby actually, is that next week, or at least in a couple of days from now, are the 98th Academy Awards, which I mentioned a few years ago that I tried to watch all of the Academy Award nominated films, and I have attempted to do that this year as well. Didn't manage to watch all of them, but I have watched, I think, 6 of the 10 Best Picture nominees. So I'll run through and I'll sort of give just briefly for people who enjoyed that segment previously. And I saw some people back when I talked about it a few years ago that gave their sort of thoughts as well. So I'd be interested to hear your thoughts if you have watched some of these movies as well. So I'll give my thoughts on the movies I think were sort of the best and who I would like to see win. So in my opinion, the best movie that I've seen. So first of all, the movies I've seen are Begonia, F1, Frankenstein, Marty Supreme, One Battle After Another, and Sinners. So I haven't seen the other movies. So that just, if you're wondering why I don't mention them, that's why. I think, in my opinion, One Battle After Another is the best of the movies that I've watched this year. So this is Leonardo DiCaprio. He's sort of going on with he's an ex-revolutionary who's forced into this sort of weird lifestyle, and essentially a whole bunch of time passes and they're trying to go after him again to sort of figure out where he is. He's got a whole different life. He's got a child at that point. And so, yeah, this him trying to escape this military officer that's hunting him down. I thought it was, really engaging and really fun. So, yeah, a great movie from that sense. I quite enjoyed Marty Supreme as well, which is Timothée Chalamet going crazy being a ping pong or table tennis player for 2 hours of just intense stuff. If you want to see a very unlikable guy just doing sports and stuff and being a bit of a dickhead, Marty Supreme, a great film from that sense. The other films I thought were largely okay. So Sinners got rave reviews from people largely in the US, I would say. It's sort of a horror film. Michael B. Jordan plays twins. There's some supernatural elements and stuff in there. It was good. I enjoyed it. Good film. I wouldn't say it was as good as the other ones. Same with Begonia, sort of great. I guess it's a comedy sort of thriller as well. I enjoyed it. Very weird, very unusual sort of things happen towards the end of that film. The F1 movie. Now, you're an F1 fan. I watched this film thinking that it would be absolute garbage because the whole premise of Brad Pitt, who's like 60, becoming an F1 driver seemed a bit far-fetched to me. They kind of made it work. The story wasn't as ridiculous as I thought it would be. And as someone that's not an F1 fan, I think they did a really great job of explaining some of the crucial elements of F1 that were necessary for the plot. So things like, the tire strategy, the pit strategy that was sort of necessary for, the moves that they had to make. They did a good job of explaining that to someone who is not a fan of that of F1 in that sense. So I didn't really know too much about the sport, but they did a great job of that, and the visual effects in it, how they got all the cars to sort of go along, and you sort of see the perspectives that they filmed it from was really interesting. And I think the film that I enjoyed the least was Frankenstein. Just not a huge fan of that story. Didn't find it particularly interesting. Obviously, it's built off the novel from, I don't know, 200 years ago, whenever it was written. Well acted and everything like that. Just don't find that story particularly compelling, though it was a well-made film. So, yeah, I would hope, based on what I've seen, that One Battle After Another would win Best Picture and probably Best Directing as well. I think Timothée Chalamet, probably for Best Actor, did the best acting job there. And then for Best Actress, apparently Jessie Buckley in Hamlet is really good, but I haven't seen it. So, we'll see. But basically, me and my partner, we really enjoy watching some of these Academy Award nominated films each year. Some of them are very like they're too artsy for us. Like we just switch off from that sense. But yeah, a lot of them tend to be quite enjoyable. And there were some good ones this year for people that I think aren't too crazy in that sort of arty, crazy, like trying to be unique sort of style. I think a lot of people would enjoy films like One Battle After Another and Mighty Supreme as well. That sort of intense action thriller sort of style movie. So yeah, that's the Academy Awards. We'll see what happens next week when we see the winners announced. But yeah, I'll try sneak in a couple more movies before the baby comes out of that bunch and go from there. So that'll do it for this week's episode. My voice is now sort of failing me as I'm still a little sick and congested, but got through the episode 100. Thanks to everyone that has managed to wait until the end, listen to the end. Thanks for that. We'll try and be back next week for another podcast episode. We'll see how it goes with content, baby stuff. We'll see. But for now, thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.